The BBC Bias Targets Brexiteers and Boris, followed by an apology from the BBC bosses, and we look at more recent examples of this behaviour. Now, for a long time, we've always known that the mainstream media, specifically the BBC, have their own agenda, and they control the narrative when it comes to politics and the news. But the BBC have their own charter, and they're supposed to be impartial, they're supposed to be professional. And so whether, when it comes to the private broadcasters, Sky and others, obviously they're still restricted because of Ofcom, but again, they don't really follow it. We have individuals like Lewis Goddell, Kay Burley, who try their best to be professional, but sometimes, they make mistakes, let's just say. Now, the BBC are a special case because they are fully, extremely regulated by their own charter, basically, and things happen every now and then. For example, Boris Johnson was on Rachel Burden's radio show and talking about the NHS policies of the Conservatives and everything else that's been going around with Brexit. And we had a former patient of the NHS calling to actually defend the current NHS, the healthcare and the hospitals that we have. Rachel Burden wasn't too happy, so she decided to interrupt her a few times. And at the end, the caller actually took control of the narrative.
I was just going to say, I've actually been diagnosed with MS about 5.5 years ago, and I can honestly say that the way I've been treated has been fantastic. It was very quick, and I'm now on medication, and that's why for me the NHS is a must. Where we've got to cut out all this money that's being wasted on high salaries and procurement, which is being completely and utterly wasted. That's what most people, I think, you will find want, and they want more nurses, they want more doctors.
Well, quite. I don't think if you spoke to a midwife or
right.
nurses on the wards, you'd be talking about high salaries.
Exactly.
But what I want to get is
and what we're
from
putting in,
you, Prime Minister.
just on
do you feel
Sarah's point.
any sense of responsibility?
Of course,
does
I
your
feel
party
a massive
take
sense of
responsibility for where the NHS is
Rachel,
now?
I take responsibility for everything. That's my job, okay? Or everything the government does.
Yes, no respect or regards for the caller and actually the content. Whatever she said, Rachel Burden just completely ignored it because her narrative on that show was to just completely criticise and destroy the NHS argument and the track record. Obviously, the NHS is not perfect. There are a lot of issues with it. But when it comes to the examples of it works in certain places and certain cases, just listen to the caller. But this isn't the first time because as you remember last week, Sunday, Remembrance Sunday, when the political leaders were at the service, Boris Johnson was there as well as Prime Minister, and the BBC decided to show an old clip of Boris from back in 2016 when he made a mistake. When he was trying to lay the wreath, he was holding it differently in the wrong way, so they showed that instead. The BBC apologises for using the wrong Remembrance Sunday clip. They had to apologise for mistakenly running an out-of-date clip of Boris Johnson laying a wreath. They said that it was a production error when the BBC breakfast show accidentally decided to play a wrong clip of the BBC, which happened to basically make him look wrong in that situation. And throughout the whole morning, the narrative turned into, Boris Johnson made a mistake, and until they were forced to apologise, they tweeted, this morning on the programme we incorrectly used the footage from a Remembrance Sunday service that was not filmed yesterday. Are you kidding me? How can you make that mistake? So I'm sure they have different folders for different footage. So if you film something a few years ago, you put it in a different archive in a different folder. And if you film something yesterday, obviously it's more recent. But somehow someone accidentally went to a whole different folder, picked something up and played it. And yeah, obviously it was a mistake, guys. It was a mistake. Now, let's look at a different example. Priti Patel was on Andrew Marr's show, and she was being interviewed on a number of issues, a number of serious issues, and this happened. The BBC again had to apologise after Andrew Marr suggested that Priti Patel was laughing during the interview. They had to apologise because he accused her of laughing during an interview about Brexit while discussing the subject with the Home Secretary on his Sunday morning show. Marr said, "I can't see why you're laughing." Patel appeared to ignore his comment and continued her answer because she's dignified. The corporation received 222 complaints and now accepts that Patel was not smiling but displaying her natural expression. During the interview, Andrew Marr read out a list of industry bodies who had expressed concern about the impact Brexit would have on their businesses. Priti Patel, who was appearing via video link, did not speak as Andrew Marr then recited a letter one group had sent to the government, but her facial expressions prompted him to suggest that she was laughing. Now, we all know Andrew Marr and his certain comments when it comes to Brexiteers on his show is quite obvious. He doesn't like them. He doesn't like the cause, and he tries to be professional, but every now and then it comes out. Now, another example goes back to May 2019, after the European elections, when the Brexit Party completely dominated the results and won that election. The corporation chief had to apologise for misleading the anti-Brexit graphic in the EU election. There was a complaint made to the BBC over a misleading graphic which suggested that anti-Brexit parties had won 40.4% of the vote, with the pro-Brexit parties attracting only 34.9% of the vote. The anti-Brexit total failed to include support for the Conservative Party, despite the Tories being committed to a policy of taking Britain out of the European Union. Now, what happened was that the anti-Brexit vote, which was clear, the Lib Dems, Green, SNP, Change UK implied at the time were completely anti-Brexit, so that's 40%. And the pro-Brexit side, they only picked Brexit Party and UKIP, despite the fact that the Tories, which were on 9%, were also pro-Brexit. Now, Labour had to be excluded on 14% because Labour didn't have a policy on Brexit. Well, they still technically don't. They're not really pro-Brexit, they're not really anti-Brexit, so they are a whole different category. But if you add the 9% of the Tories to the 34%, 35%, it will be obviously higher than the anti-Brexit vote. Now, why do you think that they are willing to risk making these mistakes, even though they are forced to apologize? Because by the time they have to apologize, their narrative has already changed. The people are talking about the anti-Brexit votes being higher. The people are talking about Priti Patel smiling and not caring about the impact of Brexit. The people are talking about Boris Johnson not being able to behave properly at the Remembrance Sunday. Because by the time there's apologies come to the news, no one actually remembers what it was about. And this is the problem. And there are a number of people, as I said, I've met in the BBC who work there, who are completely biased, and they're quite open about and public about their views. Again, they're not supposed to. According to the charter, they have to be professional and they have to just do their job. So this is the BBC that we're dealing with. We have the debates coming up. So tonight we have the leaders' debates on ITV with Jeremy Corbyn and Boris Johnson. So we're going to be covering that on this channel, and obviously we're covering the whole election and everything relating to Brexit. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel and click on the bell next to it. And if you want to stay up to date with everything else news related, make sure you follow me on social media on Twitter and Instagram. I regularly tweet and post on Instagram as well to keep you guys posted. And as most of you know already, we have our merchandise site updated. We have the new t-shirt design. All I want for Christmas is Brexit. We also have the election one, Drain the Swamp, on the 12th of December 2019. And we also have other designs if you want to check out the link in the description. And as always, I'm Tousi, and I'll see you tomorrow with a new video.